Hello, mathematicians. Today we are focusing on Module 6, Lesson number 5. We are going to model. We are going to show and create equivalents, equal versions of tenths and hundredths. And we're going to do this using the area model and place value discs. So I'm going to make some connections for you now on what does it mean to show equivalence when we're talking decimals. So in order to participate with me, you're actually going to need your Lesson 5 template today. I know we're working with some crazy stuff. So if you'd like to follow along, take note, pause the video when you need to jot things down on your own template. But I'm working with my Lesson 5 template. I have a nice little packet that has all of the templates in it ready to go. So I am going to show you how to simplify hundredths by dividing. All right, so we've done this process with fractions before. We have shown how to simplify with fractions. So we can show equivalents of 10 hundredths and 1/10, just as we showed the equivalents of 2/4 and 1/2 using division. So let me just model for you a little reminder of what that looks like, right? So if I have a model here, split into fourths, I can turn that into 1/2 quite easily because of that division. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this fraction here, 2/4, and I'm making groups, right? That's why it's dividing, because I'm grouping these, and in turn that makes 1/2. So we can use the same step, the same process when it comes to decimals, which we've learned already so many ways that decimals and fractions come into place. So I'm going to shade in 1/10 of the first area model. So I have 10 parts all together. I'm going to shade in 1. 10 parts make the whole. This looks very similar to some of the work we've done previously with fractions. Next, I'm going to shade 10 hundredths. In this area model, if I were to count every single one of these squares, there are 100. That's what makes them hundredths. It is still the same whole, it's just partitioned into smaller pieces. Wow, very similar to fractions. What do you notice here? Yeah, I noticed that the shaded amount is the same for each of these. One area is just decomposed into tenths and the other is hundredths, but this amount is the same that is selected. So because of that, we can determine that 1/10 is equal to 10 hundredths. This is a really great visual to support that. Now, we know that we can convert these fractions to decimals, so that's like saying 0.1 is equal to 0.10. Now, we know that sometimes the zeros, like in this case, the 0 before the point or the 0 after, doesn't necessarily need to be there. However, I like to document it when I'm working with hundredths exactly for this reason. When I have just 1/10 like this, it really makes it clear that my model, my whole, is partitioned into tenths. Whereas in this one, when I add that 0, it kind of like sets off this light bulb for me that lets me know that I am actually working in hundredths. So let's practice this one more time. And I'm going to do it with 3/10 and 30 hundredths. I'm going to model this in green. So I want to model that 3/10 is equal to 30 100ths. So think about, where do I start? What do I need to do? How can I show these are equivalent using division? Now that we've identified, that step, what is the process that I can do if I don't want to make the model to show the similarity between these two? Well, let's think back to what we did here. 1/10 is equal to 10 hundredths, right? So I need to divide and group these hundredths just like I did in fractions before. So 10 100ths needs to have something happen to turn it into 1 tenth. So I'm thinking, well, if I have to divide, what number do I divide 10 by to get 1? What number do I divide 100 by to get 10? Well, it's 10, right? Because we're working with place value here, right? And just as we will go 1, 10s, hundreds, and we're timesing by 10 moving up, we divide by 10 going backwards. Now we know that decimals kind of work in the flipped version, so of course I'm going to divide by 10 to create these larger units within the whole. So without even using this model here, without even using this image to say, yes, 3 of these is 100% the same as 3 rows of 10 here, right? How can I group? How can I group to show division? So I'm going to use similar steps here. 30 100ths. And I'm dividing by 10. It's how place value works. I'm making these larger pieces, so I need to divide these and group them. So based on simplifying hundredths by division, I am essentially divide my hundredths by 10 anytime to create tenths and get 3 tenths. I don't even need the model. The model is a great visual to support this thinking, but this thinking is the money. That's what gets what you need to. So think about, too, how we can work this in reverse, right? Instead of dividing, we just flip it and we can multiply and get the same answer the other way. This is a great way to check your work. When you're asked to assess the reasonableness and checking your work, that is the way you do it. So I hope you're noticing that there's a pattern here between equivalent fractions for tenths and hundredths. These steps are things we've done before. We just did it with fraction form, right? But we can very easily use these similar processes for decimals. We've just connected how we can take these fractions and decimals because 3 tenths is the same as 0.3. 30 hundredths is the same as 0.30. That fraction foundation is really key for this learning. So that's how we can simplify our hundredths, by using division.